Hello and welcome to this week's Weekly Wind-Up with me, Alison Munro. On this week's show we have two different topics, effects of cuts to the welfare budget and the right to buy. Our guests joining us today are Councillor Phil Scott.
Hello.
And Dave Hodgson.
Hi, nice to be with you.
Hello. Recently, George Osborne claimed in support of his cuts to the welfare state that Britain has an unaffordable welfare state. It seems that in order to justify the planned 12 billion cuts to the welfare budget, the Chancellor provided a sweetener by increasing the hourly minimum wage to £9 and national living wage by 2020. Well, in reality, perhaps a figure well below a real living wage in 5 years' time. However, this rise, will only benefit a minority. The rise in an hourly wage, however, means a reduction on a pro rata basis of tax credits. These reductions will be in addition to the tax credit cuts already planned. Additionally, the government's benefit cap plan threatens at least 100,000 households with homelessness and poverty. This means that large swathes of South East England, the South West and northern cities will be unaffordable for many more families once the new tax credits are introduced next April. What can you see happening as a result of these cuts and the new definition of child poverty?
Well, for more and more families are going to be struggling to make ends meet. Children are going to be the ones that are going to be worst hit, and it just doesn't seem to be logical that children are the ones that are going to be suffering. We see it in the third world countries where children do suffer and are malnutrition, don't eat enough. And this is potentially what's going to come to a country that is classed as a first world country. So what do the Tory government want us to do?
I know, Dave, have you got anything you want to add to that?
It's interesting that now the national minimum wage is suddenly going to make tax credits a thing of the past, because if you're on a minimum wage, which the government says you should be, then that means you would not be able to have any sort of top-up at all. So in fact, it may be that some people end up worse off because of this than better off. So, you know, it's kind of smoke and mirrors, isn't it? You sort of say one thing and mean another and do something in between. And I don't think it's the way a country should be run, to be honest.
No, I mean, in fact, I think some of the figures that have been released suggest that a lot of families will see a reduction in the, of £100 to £200 a week, which is a lot.
That's on top of the cuts that have already been introduced.
Yes.
So the families were struggling in the first place; they're going to struggle even more.
Well, I think I've actually heard that there are going to be cuts as well for people who are seeking asylum and their families here as well. There are cuts everywhere. It's not just for families in this country, it's for asylum seekers as well and their families who are coming here. There are going to be cuts affecting them too. I just wondered, getting back to families who are reliant on tax credits, who are living in the south and probably are in and around our northern cities. I mean, how is this going to affect them, this crisis with the tax credits? I mean, a lot of them are having to live in temporary accommodation, things like that. I mean, are they going to just end up on the streets? Is that,
There is a strong possibility. However, the local authority wouldn't let that happen. But that's now touching on the next subject that you've got, which is the right to buy and social housing.
We'll move on to that later.
If this country doesn't build the properties that it needs, we're not going to have the housing availability for people to live in. Children are not going to be leaving home until they're 30, 40, but then again, is that a bad idea? When I was at school, when I left home at 16, I had a steep learning curve, and yet, if I'd have stayed on and thought about it, I should have stayed at home because I'd have had cheap board, food, meals made for me, washing done, ironing done, bedroom done. I'd have been living a lap of luxury, but no.
Okay, right, and just a further question on this child poverty problem. What do you think the future looks like for families, who are living on the breadline? I mean, what do you think it's going to get? Do you think things are going to improve in the future? Do you think it's going to get worse?
I hate to say this, Alison, I can answer that in one word from my point of view and perspective: bleak. Absolutely bleak. I wish I could see a way out of it, and I don't see a way out of it without some drastic change some way or another. But then the problem is, the next question will, well, what is that change, Dave? And I don't know.
Well, I think we've kind of touched on it. I think we need to encourage the industry, don't we? I think that's where it's all going wrong.
Cummins were attracted to Huddersfield.
Yeah.
The council did everything they could, even to the point of making St Andrews Road. On St Andrews Road, they put humps in to slow the traffic down for them. They put 3 zebra crossings in within 200 yards, just so that their staff didn't have to walk slightly down the road to cross.
Yep.
They've made everything available, and the next time some authority comes up with a plan that looks a little bit advantageous, bye, nice knowing you, and they go. So even that doesn't work.
No.
With regards to the child poverty side of things, Alison, there are an awful lot of organisations out there, such as the TRAs, whereby they are providing breakfasts for children that need to have a breakfast in the morning. Schools have set up breakfast clubs, after dinner, after school clubs, etc., etc., and they are feeding these children up. Children that are eligible for free school meals are also, the schools get funding from central government for pupil premium. That premium has to be utilised on that child to reduce the gap that comes from being on free school meals to those that are not, with regards to the educational attainment. So it is bleak, but is it a situation that we've created for ourselves?
I think yes.
I think you're. I think yes.
We are all to blame, but some people are more blameworthy than others.
Namely politicians.
I'm not going to say that. No, you will not tempt me to say that, but nice try.
So just to sum up then, I think we know probably what part of the answer is, and also, you know, it seems that perhaps the electorate are a bit short-sighted, and they don't fully understand.
Oh, don't get me on a horse. They do what the newspapers tell them to do when it comes to
sadly.
voting.
Oh, no. Anyway, moving on swiftly. Our next news item, as reported in Huddersfield Examiner on the 9th of September, the Queen becomes the longest reigning monarch. Civic leaders in Huddersfield have joined in the tributes to the Queen. They tell of the importance of the monarchy as the sovereign makes history by becoming the longest reigning British monarch. She will pass the record set by her great-grandma, Queen Victoria, who Buckingham Palace has calculated reigned for 23,226 days, 16 hours and 23 minutes. In Huddersfield, the tributes were led by the Mayor of Kirklees, Councillor Paul Kane. He said, "The Queen is a model of public service. Even at my age, I cannot remember anybody else appearing on our money or our stamps. She has shown a truly lifelong dedication to the country and to the Commonwealth. She has been a constant in a time of massive change. We do nothing in the same way now as when she came to the throne 63 years ago. Yet she has overseen it all through 12 prime ministers, tremendous times of celebration and desperate times of sadness. She seems as popular now as at any time during her reign, and her achievements may never be matched. On behalf of all people in Kirklees, our heartfelt thanks go out to her for her public service." Join us after the break when we will be talking about the right to buy. Remember, the weekly wind-up can be contacted by email at info@kirkleeslocaltv.com or on Twitter at the weekly wind-up and on Facebook. Thank you.
However large or small your business, attracting new customers requires dedication and a lot of patience. Just like fishing, but you also need the right gear. Rods, reels, lines, hooks,
sinkers, lures, tackle box, tackle bag, net, bait, gaff, gloves, clothes, pocket knife, lunch.
Or you could simply advertise with KLTV. Online, grow your business and your clientele. KLTV, your vision made reality. Should have gone to KLTV.
Hello, welcome back. Before we talk about the right to buy, we have some news from Kirklees. This was reported in Huddersfield Examiner on the 4th of September. Could our historic arcades be the catalyst to kickstart the revolution of Huddersfield Town Centre? Independent shop owners are on a mission to regenerate Huddersfield through its arcades. Tenants from Imperial Arcade off New Street and Barham Arcade on Westgate have highlighted their achievements in the two centres and hopes to tackle the image of an empty shop crisis in the town. They say cheaper rents, appealing to younger shoppers and hosting events have been having a positive effect on their arcades, and they want more entrepreneurs to discover the benefits of setting up shop in them. They put across their views following the story about the amount of empty shops in the town. For Diversions Gifts owner Gareth Hughes said the number of prominent to let signs above the units has encouraged more interest in new entrepreneurs. I want to see pride in our town centre and think independent shops are the way forward. Meanwhile, Elisa Ettenard of Crafty Praxis in Barham Arcade talked about how independent businesses there had helped revive the site. I host monthly craft fairs which bring lots of people in, and we also have a monthly vintage sale, as well as welcoming 10 to 15 outside businesses into the arcade to give them a platform to sell and promote. Blue Rooms Bar has also breathed new life into the arcade's evening scene by playing host to gigs from many local bands. I hope this will help inspire other local businesses in the town and show the general public of Huddersfield that all is not lost. What do the people of Huddersfield think about all the empty shops in the town centre?
I think it makes it look really neglected, and I think it kind of needs a bit of a fresh overall approach for the new students come in.
I think it gives a feeling that the town centre is decaying and fading away, and there should be some way of incorporating some type of activity to keep people coming into the town centre.
I think they should be used by like more food places and shops, really, clothes shops.
Well, I think it's not good for the businesses because like they're getting no money, and I don't really understand why they're being shut down. Like, I think like the individual businesses, like I don't think they're getting that much income because of all the other big like chain stores around.
Hello, welcome back. We're just going to talk now about our second topic, the right to buy. The current government has reintroduced a right to buy policy that offers tenants living in housing association houses and flats the chance to buy their homes at a heavily discounted price. Ultimately, this policy will reduce the number of homes available for social housing. This will result in many homes being bought by private landlords who will charge higher rents than those charged by local authorities. In the Mill Green area, approximately 50% of homes are still owner-occupied, while the rest have been acquired by private landlords who let to students. Unfortunately, some landlords don't seem to be keeping up to scratch with their houses, which is causing problems in the area, as many of the private landlords do not even live in Huddersfield. Some of the permanent residents are unhappy with the situation. Before we get to the questions on the right to buy, let's hear from some residents in Huddersfield.
Everybody comes from different socio-economic backgrounds, so not everybody has the same sort of wages and privileges and money, basically. So I think a bit of fairness might be needed to be put in the situation. I think if you can afford to buy, I think that's really great. That gives you sort of ownership of your own home. But yeah, as I say, not everybody might have that privilege, so it's kind of fair on some and maybe not fair on others.
Council's right to buy scheme, I would say that it's not something that I agree with per se. I think the selling of houses off to tenants causes then issues later on in in time when councils no longer have available housing for those people coming into council properties. I have friends back home for where I'm from in London who are struggling now to find housing solely because the houses in Richmond have been sold off.
Well, I do believe it's important for people to have the opportunity to buy the house if they live for a certain amount of time in a council property. From experience, I know my daughter, she lived in a council property and she was able to buy her house for a reasonable amount of money. And I think that's just fair, because they've spent so much in the house and they spend a lot of money in the house, and I think they should be given the opportunity. And I think it's just fair, really. Otherwise it makes it difficult for them to spend so much time and so much money in the house, and then they have to find something else, and they might not be able to find another house. And I think it just makes it easy for families as well.
I'm all for it. Anybody should be able to buy their own house. There should be ways and means to get to it, and that's my opinion. I mean, I'm not against anybody wanting to buy, but if they can buy it, why not? You know. Yeah, that's it. Well, you know, I mean, they should be able. There should be some help out there for people on lower wages as well.
So, just moving onto our panel. So, is the right to buy a good policy? Dave?
Oh, thank you for that. Yes, actually, I have to put my hand up and declare an interest here, because when I moved to Huddersfield, which is now about 4 years ago, I put my house up for sale at a time when nothing was selling, and I spent a whole year, slightly more than a whole year, with an empty house, paying now not just partial tax because my son lived with me, but full tax on it, full local tax, and not living in it. So the only thing I thought, well, it's just not going to sell, and they said, oh, crazy prices at half of what it was really worth, and you might sell it. So I decided to rent it out. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would ever become a landlord, and yet I have. And I think there is a vast difference between social housing that is being built for rent and private housing which has not been built for rent. And I think there's a bit of water being muddied here as to which is which, and is one okay and the other not? Are they both okay? Are they both not? It's a very awkward question. Now, just from my point of view, I started in the rented sector because I could not afford to buy. But this was back in the early 1960s. But as soon as I hadn't laid enough money up to do it, I bought straight away. In that days I couldn't have bought the council masonette that I was living in, but I wouldn't anyway, because if I could afford a house, I wanted something a bit better than what had been rented before. Bit snobbish, okay, but if I had bought that is one property that will never get rented again. So that's another property that somebody in social housing has to go out and find another one to make sure that there's enough. And I think all that's going to happen is there's just going to be such a lack of good property to rent at reasonable prices that's going to become the next problem, that in fact you can't afford the rent, let alone can't afford the deposit on a house. With private house renting, that's another thing. But before I shut up, because I'm talking a lot here, certainly as a landlord, and I'm getting a bit capitalistic here, I don't want somebody saying, yes, they have a right to buy your house at the price they want to buy it at. No, sorry, I want it at a price that's economic for me. Yeah. Who is going to be the arbiter to say that's the price of the house? Because the people who want to buy are going to say it's too high. I'm going to say it's too low. I don't think it'll happen. I just think it's only going to lead to even more trouble. And then, of course, how many refugees are we going to have? All needing houses. Oh dear, where do we begin with this problem?
Yeah, Phil.
How about the council? Yeah.
What we've got to be mindful of is that if and central government has stated that people do have the right to buy their social housing. If it's a private rented, such as yours, Dave, then they can't take that off you. That is yours. Yeah. What I would say is that people can buy their properties. It is a good way of getting them onto the property ladders, but the perils of that are if they are low on income, where they can't afford to buy a normal house and they do it through buying their social housing. Yes, the advantages are that that social housing will be above a decent home standard, whereby a private landlord doesn't have to have that same standard. So the properties are slightly better quality inside, but with that in mind, people do get a heavy discount. If you've got a property that's at 60, 70, 80,000 pounds, that would be normal asking price. You're getting it for 25, 30,000 pounds. Yes, there's 50,000 pound profit availability there, because people do think, I'll buy that at X, I'll sell that at Y. I've made a huge profit out of this, and I'll go and buy a better house somewhere else. But what you've also got to take into consideration, and you've mentioned Moll Green, and obviously Moll Green's in my patch, is that students and Huddersfield University is doing extremely well. It is one of the top universities in the country at this moment in time, and it's expanding even further. Students do need to have the places to live, and we've seen an awful lot of student accommodation shoot up around the town centre. But students need to be quite savvy as to what they do. Yes, they can go into the student accommodation that's cropped up around the town centre at £100 a week, and that's all bills, Wi-Fi, internet, a whole shebang, and yet they can go into a house and four of them can share, but they've still got their own bills to pay and everything else. So it's not necessarily cost effective for them, and it does increase on their student loans, but they do need somewhere to live. But these landlords don't have a minimum criteria where they are governed and regulated by anybody, and they can do whatever they want. The houses do not have to be up to a certain living standard, and that is the downside of private landlords. Now, if somebody and the local authorities and housing associations do sell their properties to their tenants, the money that is generated from that is nowhere near enough to recreate or to build new social housing. So we're going to end up where social housing aspects is going to whittle away. Now, if you've got a large planning development such as the one in Golka, where they wanted 96 properties and of that they wanted 16 of that to be social housing, the company turned around and said, and this was reported in the Examiner, that they couldn't afford it, and yet that company recorded £500 million worth of profits, and yet they can't afford to do 16 social housing. So the council's done the means testing and said, right, okay, we'll accept that, but you're going to do 11, not 2. That's still not going to give us the number of social housings that we need in this area. People cannot buy properties. Properties prices are going up and up and up. Banks are still reluctant to give to the young for first-time buyers. They may say, oh, we will give first-time buyers, and we say yes to new time buyers every minute off, one every 4 minutes or whatever. That's what they're saying, but in reality, are they? And that's what we've got to be mindful of. They're not going to give my daughter, for argument's sake, who's 19 with a boyfriend, a £100,000 mortgage when she's on an apprenticeship salary. It's not going to happen. No. So how are they going to afford it?
Where
they can't. Where are they going to go? How are they going to live? And it's just one of those situations where the young children are stopping, and I've mentioned this before, are staying at home with mum and dad longer and longer and longer, and then they're putting further burdens on mum and dad on their own aspect and finances, because we're not getting younger.
So do you think this right to buy policy, do you think it's going to impact upon families living in temporary accommodation? So possibly.
Yes.
Well, if people are in temporary accommodation, then and there's nothing for them to move into, then is it temporary because they'll be there for quite some time? So it's just creating further issues down the line.
Final question then is, at a local level, do you have any thoughts as to how these issues concerning private rentals can be resolved?
Funnily enough, Alison, several years ago, I put an article out into the Examiner about private landlords not being regulated as what social housing and local authorities and housing associations were. But nobody anywhere has taken it up. Now, the council does have a scheme where they try to work with private landlords to bring their particular houses up, and they go onto a register, and the council will provide tenants for those particular landlords. But it's not compulsory, so there's nothing really out there to state that a private landlord can turn around and say, well, we're not putting anybody into you, because there's such a shortage of properties. People are going to go to whatever they can get and whatever they can afford. It's irrelevant what the sort of qualities are, but people need to have a quality of life, and that quality of life isn't being maintained by private landlords. Private landlords are only in it for one thing: their own pockets.
Well, I mean, obviously, you, Dave, would you like to come in here? Because
Yes.
you know, I think it depends on the landlord.
It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So I'm learning things by being here, you know, because not being a council person or ever being on a council or working for a council, of course, you tend to only sort of contact councils when the dustbin doesn't get empty, which is not the right way to go about it. I know, but that's the sort of thing about life. But I think I'm in the minority, aren't I?
That could be the case. Now, in the capacity as a councillor, I have actually seen where there are people living in one room, all they've got is a mattress on a floor, and that is their bed. And there's 6 and 7 blokes in that room.
And it's one up, one in, working shifts.
Yes, and is that a quality of life that you want to live in? Is that something that we want to be associated with as a country?
We shouldn't allow. We can't allow it.
I agree. We can't allow it. We shouldn't allow it. But how can we make private landlords accountable?
Should we? I mean, should we be going down the route that Dave, like Dave's got somebody in to manage the property for him? So in the way that's in a way regulating the whole thing and making it fair for everybody.
Most reputable landlords that are on that market, such as Dave, do that facility because it is the easiest way of doing it. It takes the pressure out of them. They give them the management and say, right, this is what I'm paying. You will do the statutories of the gas safety checks if there's gas in the properties. Most people take the gas out of them now because they'll put an electric pack in. They don't want the responsibility of having to go through the gas safety checks and fixing any issues with regards to that.
They could always, if they were approached by a landlord and they weren't happy with the state of the house, they could refuse to have it on their books.
Yes, they could.
I think
but if that was your business, though, Alison, would you want to refuse money coming in?
But you also don't want to be linked to something that you don't think's fit for its purpose.
Well, I certainly wouldn't be. Let's put it that way.
I do actually think there are a lot of letting agents who are like that, who are morally responsible. I do feel that.
There's nothing stopping that landlord from saying, right, okay, well, I can't get a letting agent involved in this, so I'll do it myself. I'm bound to get someone, and people do because there's such a shortage of properties. In Kirklees, we've got to have, in the next 15 years, 30,000 properties. Yeah, that's what our shortage is. And then beyond that, we've got to create further land available for development. So it's a never-ending scenario. The population of this planet is going up. Several years ago, when Dave was a young man, there was maybe 6 or 7 billion people. We're now at 8-9 billion people worldwide. Where are they going to live? This country is now up to 62 million residents in this country alone, whereas 10 and 20 years ago it might have been 40 million. People need to live somewhere.
And there goes all the wildlife.
I know, but I think that might be another subject, another topic. Thank you very much for your comments, greatly appreciated, and obviously it's a controversial issue, very much so. Finally, time for our last news story from Kirklees Women's Centre, celebrating the 30th anniversary of great work and support for women in Kirklees and Calderdale.
We are an organisation working with women in the communities in Kirklees and Calderdale, and we're celebrating our 30th anniversary. We'll be putting on a series of events around the year. We had women fundraising for us doing walks. We've been attending different events. In Halifax, we are Calderdale Mayor Charity of the Year, so we've been given support from Calderdale Mayor as well. We'll have a winter fair later this year, and the event we're doing in September is called 30+3, and that's because we've joined forces with Elisa Etemat, who's a local craft woman. She's running her own crafty business in Byram Arcade, which is called Crafty Praxis, and she's celebrating her 3rd anniversary of being able to run the shop. We'll be having an event which will be full of singing and full of exciting crafty activities for all people to join. The event is open to all men, women and children as well. Elisa will be running crafty workshops during the day, and we will be having games, flea market activities, and also a raffle. And the main part of the event will be a set of 10 songs which have come up out of the 30 Songs Challenge. And we've got a very nice mixture of original songs which have been written by the women who use our services, and they'll be also performed by the women who join our groups, and also songs which people know really well. And we'll probably have sort of song sheets on the day, so people who will come will be able to sort of join us as well, and we'll be able to sing along for that. The aim of the celebratory year is to raise money to employ a fundraiser who will be then continually able to raise more funds to support the work we do. So when people come and see us on the 30+3 event, they'll be able to sort of celebrate with us this year. They'll be able to learn about what we do because we will have information at hand, so people will be able to know more about what work we're doing. So we're doing it to raise awareness about our great year and about the great work we do, and also it's an opportunity for public to see what we're doing, because members of staff and volunteers and also women who use this service will be around on the day. People will be able to ask and see what we do.
I work at Women's Centre, and I'll be coming to the event on Saturday, next Saturday, with my daughter. I just say it's a family event as well, not just for women, just because we're a women's centre. Anyone can come and just come enjoy the day with us.
People are more than welcome to visit our website where we share the events that we organised. We have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter feed, so if people want to follow us and see what we're up to. And the year is not over yet, the 30th year of ours, so if people want to contribute, we have a local giving website where people are able to give funds to us, and also if people want to come and join us during the events, they'll be more than welcome to do that. And we can probably say it's Saturday afternoon, Saturday 19th of September, running from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock.
So that's it from this week's Weekly Wind-Up. I want to thank my guests for joining me here, and thank you to all for watching this week's show. Please remember, the Weekly Wind-Up can be contacted by email at info@kirkleeslocaltv.com or on Twitter at The Weekly Wind-Up. And we can also be found on Facebook. Thank you and goodbye.